Hey there guys, thanks for tuning in. You're watching Dirt Bike Channel. I'm your host Kyle Brotherson, and today I've got the awesome 2003 Honda CR250 project bike sitting right here. This thing is nearly ready to ride. One of the only things we have to do in order to get it ready to ride is change the gear oil. Everything else has been done on the bike, cylinders, like we've gone through the whole thing. But it needs a gear oil change, and then I'm gonna put a skid plate on it. First I'm gonna weigh it before I put the skid plate on it, but I'm gonna put the skid plate on it and then it's essentially gonna be ready to ride. But let's see how to change gear oil. Everyone has been asking me, like, do a gear oil video. No, it's not rocket science, and we're gonna do that right now. Stick around. All right, boys, so how do we change the gear oil? Gear oil is pretty easy to change. One of the things that a lot of people make a mistake is they don't warm up their bike before they do this. So take your bike around the block, get the engine case. This is warm. I don't need it super hot, I just need it warm. That's what you're looking for. So be careful. Looks like my pipe's already cooled down, which is good because I don't want to burn the crap out of myself. I also like to put down some cardboard, especially if your floor isn't like a sealed floor. You want to put down some cardboard because although a lot of times sometimes you can do this without making a mess, I almost always make a mess. This bike here, this Honda has the drain plug right on the bottom, which is actually gonna make this actually really nice. A lot of the KTMs and newer bikes, your drain plug will either be right here on the side or over on the other side, and that makes it harder to get the oil to drain out without making a massive mess. So I like to use a little latex here because latex is good for protection. And then the other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this mofo out here. This is called the Mass Oxygen Flow Optimizer. That's truly what MOFO stands for. A lot of you guys didn't know that. No, I'm gonna take the filler cap off the top of here for the gear oil, because that'll just make it drain out easier. So now that I've got all prepped, I've got a wrench. In this case, it's a 17 millimeter. I've got some extra paper towels in case I make a big mess. Got my gloves on. I got my drain pan here, and then I've got some cardboard here to protect the floor a little bit, and I am ready to loosen that sucker and drain the gear oil out. Let's take a look. Let's see if I can get a camera shot of that. Okay, now we are prepped and in position, and like I said, this one's easy because the drain plug is right down here on the bottom, which is a great place to have it. So I'm just gonna put my wrench on there, and holy Jezebel, someone has that way too tight. Way too tight. Guys, it doesn't need to be that tight. That's an easy way to strip this out. This is a used bike, 15-year-old bike, and that was a little scary how tight that sucker was. And that thing is clear full. That is coming out just aluminum colored. So I have no idea how long it's been since that was changed, but and then this funny thing is, so on this bike, it doesn't have, like on a lot of the newer bikes, they've got a magnet here on these drain plugs, which would be good. It'd also be best if we had the actual, usually these will come with like a copper washer right here to help it seal. This one doesn't have one, and I don't have one. If there is one, I don't have it. So, but generally speaking, you'd want to make sure that you've got a good copper washer here on the drain plug. And if it's damaged, you can replace those. They're not expensive. This one I might have to just put back like this because I don't have it, and I'm not even sure if it does take one on this old of a bike. But I like to sit there and let this drain out as much as possible, like up to 15 minutes. And if you tip the bike, you know, like this, if you get up here and just grab the handlebars, I don't know if I can do this without bumping my tripod, but just tip the bike up, and you can tip it one way or the other and get some more oil to drain out. Sometimes on a lot of different bikes, you'll have to kind of go back and forth and back and forth. But where this one is on the bottom, that's just kind of nice because then it doesn't actually make a huge mess. It'll just drain out here. And if everything is warm, like this gear oil here is warm, that's what you want, because then you get a better flush out of the system when it's warm. Okay, now we've got our drain plug in on the bottom and that's ready to go, all wiped off and clean. Now it's time to put oil in this thing. Now it's always good to know how much oil goes in your bike. I did a quick Google search for this bike and I think it takes between 650 and 700 milliliters of transmission fluid. It's important that you have the right amount of transmission fluid because it not only helps your gears, it also affects your clutch. So you want good oil in there and you don't want it to be under and you don't want it to be over full. So you can either measure that out exactly and then put in that much oil, or probably a better way to do it is actually, a lot of bikes will have a weep plug or a weep hole right here, like this bike. Here's a 10 millimeter weep screw or weep plug where you can pull this out. It's kind of like an overflow. So now I can pull that out and I'll put my gear oil in until it starts to come out of this guy, and then I know I'm gonna be full. So let's take a look at that. Right, so you'll always want to go ahead and just check your manual and see what gear oil you're supposed to be running in your bike. Sometimes it might be 75 weight oil. It might be, you know, a few different things. So I'm just going to slowly pour this in until I start to see. I know it's going to take most of this quart, but eventually we'll start to see some oil coming out of that seep down there. There we go. It's starting to drip out there. I'm just going to let that drip just a little bit into my thing. It's going to push out some of the oil that was up in there, some of that oil that I don't really want in there from my oil gear change. And once that starts to slow down a bit, then I know I'm about where I want to be with this thing. And I know I'll be at the right, exactly the right, you know, level of oil. Okay, once that slows down enough to your satisfaction, then you can just go ahead and put your seep plug or your oil level plug bolt back in and get rid of this. I'll just torque that back down with my T-handle. Doesn't need to be too high, or too tight. Remember, this is an aluminum engine case, and wipe that off. We're good to go there. So that's all there is to it, guys. It's not difficult. On these two strokes, I generally go like, as far as how often I do a gear oil change, I'll go between 20 and 40 hours because I'm not racing, I'm not riding them super hard. And even if I was racing, I don't think they need to be changed, the two-stroke, more than, you know, every 20 hours. Four strokes, you have to change your engine oil a lot more because there's a lot more heat and it's lubricating a lot more things. With a two-stroke though, that's one of the advantages of doing a two-stroke is this gear oil is really just lubing the transmission and it's lubing the clutch. You know, so you're not actually doing anything with the top end of the motor there. So most of the really high heat parts are up in a different system. So that's how you change the gear oil on your two strokes. It's really, really simple. It makes it a little bit more difficult if you have a skid plate on the bike, and it makes it a little bit more messy. So just bear that in mind. You might want to do it outside in those cases. That's pretty much it on this. This bike is nearly ready to get out and ride. Unfortunately, I can't ride it yet, but I'm gonna maybe enlist the help of a couple of riding buddies and see how this thing does, because it'll be pretty interesting to see. If you have comments, leave them down below, obviously. Please like the video, share, subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can check out what we're doing over there. A lot of times you can kind of get an inside view onto what things are coming up a little bit earlier if you hit that on social media. If you have questions, hit me up on my page, dirtbikechannel.com. There's a contact Kyle page on there. If you send me an email, I will respond to you. And if you want to win a dirt bike, if you're watching this video before September 30th of 2018, you can still enter to win my 2019 KTM 300 XCW TPI. That's pretty much it, guys. So until next time, go out and get some riding done, okay? Thanks.